Hey there, it's the day of Christmas Eve, so I'm starting to make this year's brose to be served on Boxing Day. The recipe is a scaled down version of the one used by the Seaforth Highlanders of Canada since 1910. I'll post the full recipe in all its glory, which produces something like 1,080 servings, which gives you an idea of the level of hospitality we used to host. So I've got my stone crock, I've got water. Now, great thing about Vancouver water, tap water, is it's great. It's as good as rainwater. It's lovely. If you live in a place where the drinking water, the tap water is a little suboptimal, shall we say, you can either collect rainwater or use bottled water, which always tastes horribly flat to me. Anyhow, I've got water. Last year I had used honey from our own hive. But at the end of season, this last summer, we looked at the honey reserve in the hive, and we decided not to rob the hive that year. There's enough for the bees, we hope, fingers crossed, to make it through to the spring. So I've taken the last of our honey. There was about an inch in the bottom of the pot, and I've put in some warm water to soften it. And so I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to top up with Bee Made, which swears to me that it's not pirate sugar disguised as honey. I've got porridge oats. Now the recipe usually calls for groats, which are steel cut oats. I rather like porridge oats because it produces sort of a floury, chalky mouthfeel to it, which I grew up with and I consider normal. Other people might not like it, in which case you can go for steel cut. So what we do is we take 3 quarts of water. So I've got 8 cups, which is 2 quarts. Incidentally, I'm doing it down here in the shop because this is about the coolest, nay, sometimes coldest place in the house. The shop's in the ground floor, the basement floor of the house, ground floor, far away from the boiler in the next room. And once I do this, I'm going to cover this and put it in the windowsill, because if it gets too warm, it'll ferment and be ghastly. Again, unless you've grown up with an acquired taste of that. So there's 2 cups. Now I'm going to put in my honey that I've melted out of that pot with warm water, and I see that I've got a little bit less than a quart. So what I'm going to do is, excuse me just for a second, I'm just going to top this up in the next room. You don't have to follow me as I do that. Wait one. There we are. So we've got 3 quarts of water. Now we add the oats. It's 3 quarters. I'm quickly looking. 1.5 pounds of oats. Now, this is our old kitchen scale, which may or may not have been liberated from the Chris Spencer department store that my mother worked at before the war, Second World War. It's a nice little piece of kit because it's got a graduated, a mill graduation scale and knob, twisty knob on the back, where I can calibrate the scale to include the weight of the. Now this isn't mission critical. I can do it a little bit less, but there we are. 1.5 pounds of oats. Oh, come on. This is going to wind up to be the whole darn bag. Okay, well, there's 1 pound of oats. Here comes 1/2 pound, so there we are, 1.5 pounds of oats. Now I added, looks like I have exactly 1 more serving of oats for breakfast until I can make it at the store after Boxing Day. Now, I've discovered that it's important not to use a metal spoon or a metal container to do this. So I'm using stoneware, ceramics. You can use glass, but if you use metal, you're going to get a metallic taste. The same thing, I'm not using metal spoons, I'm using wooden or plastic spoon. In the old days, they'd use a horn spoon, which was basically the plastic of the day, made from cow horn. I have a horn spoon around here somewhere, but I couldn't find it. So there's our oats and our water. mixed together. Now I'm going to add, I added a bit of honey. I'm going to add about, what does my recipe call for? 3/4 of a pound of honey. So, which is about, I'm going to say, down to the top of the label. Easy way to do this, of course. Okay, I got 2 pounds of honey. Let's bring it down to 1 1/4. This used to be, and presumably still is, a ritual amongst, good Lord, lots more to go, amongst the junior officers of the subalterns of the regiment. Okay, so that's about right. I'm just going to add just a smidge more. And again, as I believe I mentioned before, the quality of the ingredients counts. You're making a lot, you're mixing a lot of material, but it's important not to scrimp on the ingredients. If you use artisanal honey, because again, the honey will reflect what the bees were collecting from at the time. I mean, spring honey tastes quite a bit different from fall honey, and this is a real revelation when our neighbors up the street started keeping bees, and then we followed. The difference, the wonderful difference in the taste. The first time I tasted this stuff, I was like, my first question was, what's that garbage I've been buying in the stores? Because I could taste the flowers in my own yard. I could taste the lilac tree up the street. Wonderful stuff. So there, I've given it a good mix with a plastic spoon. Now we're going to let this sit for 72 hours, for 3 days. There's a story that's crept up in the popular culture of the officer's mess that it should sit for 3 weeks. No, you're going to get something awful. We've done that before. Don't do it. So what I'm doing now, I'm going to cover this with a bit of cloth. I'm going to tie it off. Slow it down a bit just to keep things from getting in. I'm going to put a plate on top because we have a cat, a neighbor's cat that comes and visits us. And I wonder if that neighbor knows that his cat is cheating on him by coming over for affection here. Bit funny. And his cat is as curious as all get out. And I know it's going to jump on top of this thing. And then, were the plate not here, there'd be a very astonished cat. In normal circumstances, I paid money to see that. But at the same time, I don't want to pay this money to see that. So I'm going to just carefully move this stone over into the windowsill where it's nice and cool. And part 2 of this odyssey will be on Boxing Day, when I ladle off the mash, squeeze it out, and add the whiskey, the Drambuie, and the cream. Thank you.